Dear God, thank you that we're able to meet again and continue learning together. I pray that the second part may be fruitful for all those involved and for you too. I thank you. Praise your name. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. So in the break, I tried looking for a verse to try and demonstrate the point that I tried to make at the close of the last class or time together. And a good one that I came to, at least, is Ezekiel 28, verse 15. And while the context of this is talking about the king of Tyre and in secondarily Satan, Lucifer, I think the principle applies all the same. So the verse being when describing this entity we associated with Lucifer is that the author is going to say to Lucifer, or describing Lucifer, you were perfect in all your ways from the day you were created. So this entity is created perfect, but it gets to a point where iniquity is found in it. So it sins, essentially. So it goes from being perfect in its creation, then it sins, and then the period thereafter we can deem as iniquitous, morally corrupt, etc. And that's the key point I was trying to make about this head, this political institution with power, is based on just by reading that it sins. You wouldn't say something that is created imperfect goes on to sin because it's already imperfect. It's already morally corrupt. So there'd be no point John or the angel wasting their ink in saying that it sins. But by pointing out that it has sinned means that it was created perfect before it got to that point of sin, and then it's corrupt thereafter. And so now, as I said before the prayer, I'm going to change gears a bit and share my perspective about what's happening in this goodness, this good phase, because the step that I would like to go from there is discussing the difference between the sixth and the seventh kingdom. So separate to the woman, this in inverted commas bad woman that this king is going to commit fornication with. This transition between 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 means that there's a difference between each of those 7 kingdoms. So if, bearing with my hypothesis, each of these 7 kingdoms are good in and of themselves, are perfect in their ways from the moment they're created, what difference can we identify between the sixth and the seventh kingdom without saying that there's no bad woman on the sixth kingdom, but there's a bad woman on the seventh kingdom? Because then that difference is about the bad woman. It's not about the kingdom. So the question I'm trying to answer, or at least trying to figure out, is what difference is there between the sixth and the seventh inherent to themselves, separate to the woman? And a way to do that, I think, is by trying to see what this kingdom looks like before any fornication happens. I hope my broad question is clear, as now we go on this journey of trying to identify what that difference is between the sixth and the seventh kingdom. Again, separate to their interaction with this, in inverted commas, bad woman. A place.
Would it be their ideology?
So go on, Greg.
Their ideology and how they see themselves and their aims and their goals.
So if we start with the premise that they're both good, so the sixth and the seventh are good, their goals are to serve the people. I'd like to elaborate on what you said a bit more. So if inherently their goals are to serve the people from the moment they're created, what difference can we see from that? We'll come back to it at the end. I just wanted to set that as the premise to start off with, and then we'll come back to that at the end if we have enough time. Okay, so a place I'd like to begin is in Revelation 12. And having Elder Terry here with us is a huge benefit because she's done various studies about Revelation 12, which I'm hoping in the last few months you've watched as she recapped our understanding, or at least our perspective of Revelation 12. I just want to go into that chapter and follow the story from start to end and see how it feeds into the sixth dispensation. So we're at the beginning of verse 1, and John is presented with a symbol that he's going to see, this woman. And this woman is going to be clothed with sun, and this woman is going to be standing on the moon, and this woman is going to be wearing a crown of 12 stars. Wow, how do you spell 12? 12 stars. So John is shown 4 different symbols, all packaged together, and Uriah Smith is going to give up a perspective about these symbols. And I'd like to offer another perspective, which I don't think is in contradiction to the perspective that Uriah Smith gives. So bear with me as we go through it slowly. So this woman, we have the moon under her feet. Quick fire, rapid fire. This moon, we'll start with the moon. What does that moon represent? What is that moon? If you remember.
That's Mosaic dispensation, the Old Testament.
Okay. Mosaic dispensation. Old Testament. And then the woman is clothed with the sun. What does that sun represent?
The full gospel. The full light.
Sure. So the full light, the greater light, etc. But it's referring to a specific dispensation. And I'll just pick out a word that you used, the gospel dispensation. And then those 12 stars. Someone other than Josephine. Those 12. Thank you, Ole. So there's some aspect of organization being brought out without getting into the technicalities of what that organization looks like or what that organization is. But there's something about organization or governance with those 12 stars. And then we have this woman. So each of these different things are shedding light on perspectives, past or future, about this entity. Remember, we defined a woman, the symbol, as an entity with an ideology. So that same description, that core underlying description that we used in Revelation 17, we have to, I'm not saying we have to define it in Revelation 12 the same way, but if we were to break down Revelation 12 and we were to define the symbol, then we have to start with the generic baseline definition, which would be an entity with an ideology. and then we can go through dispensations to find what that entity is. So if we just leave this blank for now, the woman, and break down these three things, sun, moon, and 12 stars. Yeah. Was that
Sorry,
Greg?
Curtis.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got organization. Can you expand on that? Because the gospel dispensation and Mosaic dispensation, they were organized too. So when you just write organization, what does that mean?
Who said organization? Was it Molly? Was
Yeah,
that you? Yeah. What did you mean by organization?
I mean, the 12 stars talking about the 12 disciples that were called to begin the movement apart from the Jewish people.
Yeah. I'm going to do something that I didn't want to do in this study. I'm going to call on, because I like the way she explains it, Elder Terry. So just building on what Molly said, Elder Terry, these 12 stars, you've taught about them in the past. In brief, how do you understand these 12 stars in relationship to organization?
That I think organisation really is the word that covers it. 12 disciples gets too specific, but it represents the government that will control the woman.
So that
That is
woman,
part
that
of the
entity. Go on.
is not divided into the parts that it represents the entire body,
Mhm.
and that body has a governmental function.
So this becomes important, what Elder Terry just explained, because it's easy for us to use 12 disciples, but if we stick to our golden rule, which is trying not to be specific when we can and leaving things at generic definitions, this governance structure is going to point to the fact that this entity, if it's going to work well, it needs some level of organization, whether past or future. There's a specific level of governance that's going to help it carry out its mission, its function, etc. So, to you, Greg, does that answer that? Did Molly and Alteri help?
It does, but if you're going to say the 12 disciples are 12 stars, are the organization of the government of the Christian movement, if you like, that helps the woman function. What's the gospel dispensation?
Altateria was very specific to not call them the 12 disciples. She specifically left it generic. No, that's okay. She left it generic to point out that these two periods of time of the sun and the moon, we have split like that. We have the moon and we have the sun. Dispensation 1, dispensation 2. That's, if we can leave it as, that's referring to dispensations of a particular work that's going to be done. And then you have organization. So I know Uriah Smith will point us in a particular direction of going back in history and then talking about the future and all these fancy terms that he uses. But that thing is going to need to be organized. This woman is going to need to be organized to serve, to do what it's designed to do, if that helps. So just stepping back from 12 disciples and just thinking of it as specific. We used the term at the beginning when defining institutions, sets of laws, rules, or norms that get packaged into a structure to serve. Elder Terry, I saw you unmute there.
Just as an addition, the number 12 in Bible numerics means perfect government.
Is that as a symbol? If we just use
The number 12 is a symbol for perfect government.
perfect government. Thank you. Do you have a verse for that by any chance? Just for my reference.
I'll have to get the book out.
That's okay. So while Elder Terry's finding that, we'll just take that as fact. I like that. That if we just trace the symbol. Yeah, go on.
Sorry for interrupting you. I just wanted to say, could we look at it too symbolically as the 12 tribes?
So I guess that's how we would go to understand symbols. We'd look at all these various places where 12 comes up and we get the underlying principle, the consistent principle that we see. And that's one of them for sure, is that there's these 12 tribes that get organized to organize ancient Israel. So maybe Elder Terry doesn't need to go for wherever, find us a verse, just using that as a concept that we have these 12 tribes and they're specifically organized into 12 because God is organizing the nation of Israel. And when we do find that verse eventually, we can demonstrate that 12 is that symbol of perfect government or perfect organization in order for society to function. This leads to what I want to do with the moon, is that at least Uriah Smith, and normally we do the same, is we look at this in relationship to the gospel through that lens only. But Josephine pointed out that this is the Mosaic dispensation, this moon. And what type of system is Israel operating under in this Mosaic dispensation? In relationship to its, we'll call it, I'm giving it away, in relationship to its church function and its political function. How do the two relate in the Mosaic dispensation?
The church and state structure.
So they exist, if I can use the term, they cohabit, yes. They coexist.
Yes.
Theocracy. Yeah.
So the term is theocracy. Church, state, there's no separation. The two are one. So it's not as simple as saying, pointing to one being the church leader and one being the state leader. They work hand in hand. They're inseparable because they're the same thing. They coexist, they complement each other, and they're designed to be used together. That's how the nation of Israel is set up. So the church is Israel, if I can put it that way, and the state is Israel, if I can put it that way. That temple that's created, Solomon's temple or the sanctuary system, it serves two functions. It serves the function of, the term that was used earlier is spreading the gospel of the coming Messiah. But in the same way, in the same breath, that same sanctuary or that same temple is the legal structure of the nation. So if you go through that legal system, it's the courthouse, it's the ambassadorial function that the nation of Israel is going to use. When other nations would look at this big, beautiful temple, they'd go up to Solomon and say, hey, this is a pretty cool temple. Let's become allies. And the hope is that when they see this, they come closer, and now they're going to get duped into seeing all these goats and whatnot and fall into the sanctuary system. So it serves two functions. That's how it was created. They were created to complement each other and function together. We can't separate them. Why it's important to see that when we talk about the moon is that now we're going to go into this new dispensation, which is termed the sun, in this picture over here. So church and state coexist. we're in, I'm just going to give it a year, 4 BC, where this transition happens. And what's going to happen now? So we have all these people in the nation of Israel. And what's going to happen to this unification, this theocracy? What's God going to find it important to do if the people are going to be served effectively?
They would have to be separated.
So the church gets separated from the state. What's the job of the church? Who spoke about the separation?
Deborah.
Deborah, what's the job function of the church?
Well, as you were saying, it serves the people.
In what way?
So that they are independent to worship their God.
Could I put spread the gospel?
Yes,
Does
to
that
be an
encapsulate
influence.
what you were? Sure. To influence.
They're like a depository for the law of God, to be an influence for good for those around them.
Character. So it's very moral in its function. It's moral in terms of spreading the gospel, shaping character, etc., etc. And the state, someone that's not Deborah, what's the function of the state now? Across both dispensations, throughout time, why are states created? Molly.
To look after its people.
First part, please say that again.
Just to make sure that the people will be looked after. It's for the people.
So to protect the people.
Yeah.
By serving them.
Yeah.
So now in this new dispensation, what we have here, number 2, what we've termed the Son, this job function is going to be taken out of Israel's hands and given into Rome's hands. So the church will say remains spiritual Israel. That's the Christian church that's being set up and etc. But what God finds it really important to do is this state function is going to be taken out of the hands of the Israel nation and given into the hands of Rome. Because Rome is going to do that job well. It's going to do a good job. Or it's set up, or it's, we'll say created, to do this good job of protecting the people, because Israel wasn't doing that anymore. So they separated over here. Often, what we end up doing is we look at the moon and we talk about this church element, the sanctuary system in terms of how it points to the Messiah. But we're forced to recognize, even though we can't see it, is the function of the state in all of that, in that moon dispensation, is the function of the government, the separate to gospel spreading, etc., is that work of civilization. If we can see it there, where they are in unison, and we compare and contrast that moon with the sun, what do we have to see when we look at this second dispensation, even though it might not be so obvious? Here's our moon. Here's our sun. In our moon, we have a theocracy. So in our sun, what are we going to have as a characteristic of the woman? Does my question make sense, first of all? Tell me if it doesn't make sense.
A church, representing the church, pure church, true church, fully organized.
So we see the church for sure. This bright, Uriah Smith will use the term, this greater light, full light, the glorious church that God is raising up. If this light is a greater, fuller light of this light that we see in the moon, and this moon had two elements to it, which is the church function and the state function of Israel. And we talk about the sun and this beautiful Christian church, glorious Christian church that is being set up. My question is, what do we have to see there, even though it's not so obvious? James, you unmuted.
The state power.
We have to see the fact that Rome is that glorious Rome that's set up to protect the people, because God needs that. God needs that government function, as they did in the previous dispensation. God is going to use Rome now to fulfill that job function in this succeeding dispensation. I want to take a pause here and make sure and ask if this makes sense. We take the moon and we juxtapose it with the sun. We say we know a bit more about the moon, the fact that it's theocracy, and it being a theocracy means that the state is there, the church is there. So when we look at the sun and we bring the sun next to the moon and we compare and contrast the two, what gaps can we fill into the sun? And James said the fact that the state is present, that state that's been ripped out of the hands of Israel and placed into the hands of Rome. Any questions or comments about that fact? Because it influences our next step.
It is your point that we have not paid attention to how important a state power is for the good of people? Like, we focus that church is maybe all we need or something. Is that the point of us seeing the value of state here?
It's part of the point. It's more so, but let me not say more so. In connection to that, the next step is it influences how we view this woman of Revelation 12. Because if you ask any Adventist, if you ask Uriah Smith, this woman is the church. This woman is the church in the old dispensation. This woman is the church in the new dispensation. But do we have the license, by using methodology, to see it beyond just a church function and something that is set up to serve the people beyond this moral mission? Is that?
Yeah, okay. Because we're going to be looking at women in terms of maybe more political lens. So we can see kind of a political lens in this picture you've just drawn as well. That it's part of the story. It's not irrelevant, is that?
Yeah, it's not irrelevant. I guess that's the point. So this woman is going to go through persecution in this chapter. So if this is true, that we can view... Wole, yeah, is that a hand?
Yeah, before you move on, Curtis, thank you. I want to ask a question. We said that in the New Testament history, in the gospel dispensation history, God took the state component out of Israel and given to Rome, because Rome gonna do a better job for the people. But we know that in this time period, Rome has already changed from a king to a beast. I think I can't say like that, because it's already a king of the north. So being king of the north, how can we say that it can do a better job for the people? Thank you.
No, thank you for your comment. So one thing that I've tried to be careful with, at least, is using symbols from across chapters. So if I were to use a symbol from Daniel 11, using it when I'm talking in Revelation, because for me at least, I find it easy to get tripped up about the king of the north, who's the king of the north, who's the kingdom, etc. At a basic level, just my thoughts without proving it, is that when we talk about king of the north, I think about it in terms of the woman. If we were to think about it that way, it's not the kingdom, it's the king. It's the entity with an ideology in the north. And that king of the north is going to use a tool. In Daniel 11 verse 40, it talks about that king of the north needing chariots, horses, ships. In Revelation 17, it's that woman needing a head. So I'll just write here ships for now. And then that woman in Revelation 17 is going to need a kingdom. So just with that clarification, going back to Rome now, when we talk about Rome as this kingdom, we know that it goes through a transitionary phase of being this kingdom that does a whole load of good, and then it transitioned into persecuting God's people eventually. And what I want to take away from this, if we can start looking at the Son or this dispensation post 4 BC as not just the church element, the Christian church that's being raised up, but Rome as a state. Paul says, it divides it well, that you have this church, give to God what belongs to God, but you have this state as well, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. So the state is designed to do its function, and you need to serve it because it's there to serve you. And then you have this church, it's designed to serve you. So we already know that part and parcel of that is that there's a good. But what you've pointed to is this transition that this Rome is going to go through. So if we have spiritual Israel, I'm just going to call it the church for now. I hope in your minds you just keep at the back of your mind that I'm talking about the Christian church. These two things are going to come under attack by this bad woman, if we can use that terminology. This bad woman needs to convert Rome from being a state, just a normal functioning state, into what we're going to call a dragon. Before that dragon or that state can be used to attack the church, the Christian church, and persecute the church. So it's this process. The bad woman is going to find a state that's designed to do good, convert it, it becomes a dragon, and that dragon is now going to persecute the church. And in my mind, that's the story we're reading in Revelation 12, of this process of each of these things coming under, I'm going to use the term loosely, persecution. First Rome, and then the people. First the state, and then the people. Because what we said at the beginning was that the personal is political. The way to get to the people is through the state. So first the state needs to be converted. So when we read about this woman in Revelation 12, I'm suggesting that there's two aspects of it that we should look at. that's coming under persecution. That state aspect, which gets converted, it drinks of the wine of the woman. And then the church, which gets persecuted, it gets attempted to drink of the wine of this bad entity with a bad ideology. So, Wale, did that kind of answer your question or your concern?
Yes, thank you. It helps a lot. So, in relation to that, the symbol, the sun, constitutes both the church and the state aspect.
That's my suggestion, at least.
Thank you very much.
So as we read, yeah, go on, Josephine.
I was just wondering, because Israel failed, Rome has come to take over the government. Now, as we go towards the end, it would have to return to the original state where God's people will have the same theocratic government. When
Before we
pass
get
the
to the
Sabbath,
end, so before we get anywhere close to the end, we need to be sure we understand the beginning correctly. Because if we don't understand the beginning, there's no way we're going to understand the end. So,
sorry for jumping.
no, that's okay. That's okay. It's just, for me at least, I like to understand the beginning first because I don't really know what's going to happen at the end. So I work the other way. So this woman, whatever it is, what's going to happen to it as we go through the verses and we get to, let's go to verse 14. So we get to 14, and what's going to happen to this woman, this thing that's being persecuted? It's going to be given 2 wings, and it's going to go into the wilderness. This wilderness, we can jump through some hoops and point to the fact that we're in this particular time period now, the 1260. This time, now where it's nourished for time times half a time, this 1260. But because this woman gets persecuted, what comes to the rescue? This woman is persecuted by a flood. This serpent this dragon casts out water from a flood, etc. And it's carried away. What comes to the rescue?
The earth beast.
The earth what, sorry?
Beast.
So if we don't jump to 13 and we just stick in 12, we don't read anything about beasts here. We just read earth. It just says the earth is there to rescue this woman that's fleeing from persecution. Is that fair, Molly?
Yeah.
Could I just say, Curtis, it says that it was given 2 wings of a great eagle.
Yeah, exactly. So this woman was sent into the wilderness, particularly because of that persecution that's happening from that dragon, where it's going to be nourished and etc. And we can unpackage what all that means. But in that, it finds itself in this place, in this time period, and now a flood is going to come after it. But to be rescued from that flood, there's something that comes to the rescue, and Molly pointed out that it's the earth. This is where I want to start our story, counterintuitively, is that this earth, what is the earth? So Molly intimated that, is it the beast? Is it a geography? Is it a place? What is this earth where the woman is going to find safety? And what provides the safety for this woman?
It's the USA, and it's also the Constitution.
So multiple people spoke, and so I didn't catch that. Anyone? Someone said USA?
Marie spoke first. I was just leaving her with it. Did you want to just repeat what you said again, Marie? Are you happy to do that?
Thanks. Yes, thanks, Debbie. I said the USA, and I said the Constitution.
So we have a constitution. And I'm assuming when you said the USA, you meant the USA Constitution. Anyone else? Any other answers different to that?
Are you talking about post 1260 or during the 1260?
Whatever this protection is, I just want to know what this earth represents.
Okay, pre
That's going to help the woman.
The Christian church historically went into the wilderness, as in the hills of the Waldenses.
Is that what John is being showing? Is he being shown that this earth is the hills of the... I want to know specifically what John is being shown here when it says earth. James?
Geography.
Any specific geography? Just any geography? Is it just being sent to, as Greg put, the hills, like the Waldenses?
No, well, specifically the US, so basically away from Europe.
Okay.
The Sixth Kingdom?
Europe. So we'll say that landmass of what today is called the USA, James, does that encapsulate what you were trying to say? Okay, so I'm putting USA, but James's answer is that it's long before the USA becomes the USA. It's just this landmass that exists where now today is the USA. And Josephine, I think you said the Sixth Kingdom. So these are three very different, in my mind, very different answers. And we need to be sure what this earth is that's providing this protection. Is it the Constitution that protects the woman? Is it the Sixth Kingdom? This, kingdom, whatever we're going to define a kingdom as, that's going to protect the woman? Or is it simply the earth, that is this landmass that separates Europe? So here's this landmass, and here's the sea, and here's Europe. I'll just say the New World. That's going to protect them. What does Ellen White say this earth is? Who haven't I heard? Tini, are you there? Or anyone, if you remember, how does Ellen White describe what's happening? She talks about it in early chapters of the Millerite history. So just before the Millerite story comes into the picture, she talks about these voyages and how she's going to describe the earth.
Did you say it's the glorious land of the new land? Or... No?
So along those lines, Elder Terry, do you want to give us a hand?
I'm sorry, you weren't after New World? What was your question again?
So between these three options that were given, the protection that this woman is going to get, the earth, what is this earth? Is it the Constitution of the USA? Is it just geography? So I use the word New World. So this geography that exists that's distant enough from Europe that the papacy is not going to get their hands on? Or is it whatever the sixth kingdom is. What's the earth? That's the original question. And so everyone gave perspectives. I wanted to ask your perspective.
So I would go with geography if we were to line it up with Revelation 13. Because
Can
you've
you
got to
walk us through
compare it
that
with
logic?
the sea.
Okay.
Well, the sea beast comes out of the sea, that is the populated areas of Europe. The land beast comes out of the earth, which is the unpopulated areas of the New World.
Did that make sense, Josephine?
Oh yeah, I understand.
So
I understand that correctly.
So there's this specific geography that this beast is going to come out from, the earth. That's why it's the earth, a beast, because it rises out of a specific geography. That's separated by these waters, this big ocean that the papacy, this bad woman, can't get to anymore. And now I'll just state things as fact. You could go to pick various years. I'm going to pick one that at least I read in Ellen White's writings, or in history, of when this migration happens or begins to happen. 1620. You have these pilgrims who are going to run away from all this persecution that's happening in the old world under the auspices of the papacy. And it's not just your religious Protestants who are running away. It's secularists. It's people who are running away from being forced to think in a specific way. So your scientists. It's a whole group of people who are running away from a way of life in Europe. Or Ellen White will talk about it in the context of Christian Protestants because she wants to make a specific point. But historically, there's a whole bunch of different people that are running away in search of a new home in this geography that's going to provide protection to these people that are running away. So they land on the shores of the New World, this earth, and that's long before 1798. 1798 is here, and whatever year we pick, we know it's before 1798. I've just given it 1620. So there's all this protection that's happening long before this beast or this kingdom is even created. So this woman comes to the earth and for all this time is growing as societies grow, finds protection there. More and more people come. The societies grow. And what do societies do once they get too big? What do they find it necessary to do? Going from 1 to 5 to 1,000 people, people look around and they say, it's important we do this thing so that we're not just vagabonds.
Government?
They create a government. They recognize that if we're going to be a functioning society, we need to create a government. So this woman runs to the earth, finds protection in the earth, and creates that government. The people create that government, this kingdom that we're going to call the sixth kingdom. That's sorry. That's beyond a religious function. So the point that I want to make from that is that just by the woman finding refuge in the earth and the creation of this government that we have here, I hope we can see that there's a political element to this woman as well, beyond the religious element that we often focus on. It's because she's creating this political system. This political system that gets created here is going to be different to all those other governments that are created before. And the difference is that when she creates this government, she's going to codify that this government can never have a particular type of entity riding it. Only a good entity, an entity with, we'll term it, a good ideology, and so on and so forth, with all that church and state separate, etc., etc. But the point that I want to make from all of this is that we see the woman existing in this landmass we call the New World long before 1798. And it's that protection that fosters an environment for this kingdom to be created. And that kingdom is going to be a government by the people, for the people, and of the people. That's the sixth kingdom. So now we come to the question I started off with, is this sixth kingdom is created. What difference is there between the sixth kingdom and the one that we read at the end, this seventh kingdom? So when these people create this kingdom, what do they feel is important about the sixth kingdom? They don't want it to be a monarchy. They look back and they say, we're tired of monarchies. So what do they do to this kingdom that makes it different from the monarchies that they're running away from? What's
Your
unique? Go on.
Your answer is there in point 1, isn't it? There where they've created the constitution.
So all those other kingdoms, they didn't have constitutions as we would call them today, but they had rules about how governments should function. That's all a constitution is. So we know Medo-Persia had a constitution. They had some form of law regulation. So even Medo-Persia had a constitution. So I'm asking what's unique about the sixth one in comparison to the previous 5?
It writes in that you're not allowed to have a king. It codifies it.
So no king. What about that? What about that makes it important? What is a king? What is a king?
A king is like
one.
Oh, go ahead. Go, Graham.
I was going to say power resting with one person.
So they recognize that this kingdom, this seat of power, this political institution that we create cannot have too much power. It can't have all the power concentrated in and of itself, because if it does, it leads itself easily to be abused. So all these restraints and restrictions and what they call federalism is instituted to make it safe, to make it a safe seat of power. Does that, how I rephrased it, does that align with what you had in mind, Graham?
Yeah, it's if you've got a single seat of power, it's easily corrupted.
Question.
Yeah, go on.
Please. You talk about federal. So you're talking about federal government, and then you're talking about...
I'm not talking about federal government. I'm talking about federalism. So there's a important distinction between them.
All right.
The federalism, they're connected, but just put simply, federalism is that system that the USA has, where it says that the states are going to have, like each of those states across the country are going to have power in and of themselves. Congress is going to have power. The Supreme Court is going to have power. The executive branch is going to have its own source of power. So this power that exists is going to be spread out in what became a dirty word in a libertarian kind of fashion, that there's not going to be this centralized source of power, because that's how the monarchies operated. And Graham alluded to, I guess, the direction I was going was that what ends up happening when you have centralized power is, personally, I wouldn't use the word corrupted, but it's easy for an entity to grab hold of that power and use it. Whereas if you have a bad entity come to something where power is spread out, that the power that they do have, they're not able to do anything with it because they don't have that much power. So this political institution has power, but we'll say it's restrained in how much power it can use, because the way the society creates that, I've used the term chair in the past, the seat of power is in a regulated fashion. Are we on the same page?
You're asking me?
Anyone,
Yes,
everyone.
you've given an insight to federalism before I had a narrow outlook on it, thinking about the federal government. But now,
Sure.
yes,
It plays into that because the federal government is going to be, we'll say, the big government. So we'll talk about the presidency and what they're able to do at a national level. So very much connected terms. So if that's what made the Sixth Kingdom unique in terms of how it was constructed, that it has these restraints, it's a good form of government, it's a necessary form of government, it's created to serve the people. The next question is, when we get this seventh kingdom rise up, whenever it rises up, going back to what we said at the beginning, that this seventh kingdom, whatever it is good. It's created good. It's not a dragon. A dragon would infer that there's a bad woman riding it. But this seventh kingdom just exists to do good. So if we say that this is regulated power, what we want to identify is, what is the seventh kingdom? So just going through a bit of history quickly, it won't do the topic justice, but if any of you, I hope you take the time to, when you have the chance, watched Anna in Brazil's presentation about Project 2025 the weekend before last, the camp meeting that occurred in Brazil. Anna did 2 presentations about Project 2025. And in that, she spoke about, I'll use the term, a plot to reorganize and empower the executive branch. And she talks through a bunch of history that starts under the Reagan administration and it tails off into the present. But the key thought from that, even if you haven't watched it, is that in 1798, when this Sixth Kingdom was created, there was an argument about how much power the president should have. And so Article 2, for your own reference, Article 2 of the Constitution, Section 1, talks about the fact that the executive power, so the executive branch, let me not infer anything. The exact wording is, the executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States. Let me just post it there. That's what it says. Now, when they were framing this constitution, some of the framers, like Alexander Hamilton, argued that this executive power must be concentrated in one office. The president must have direct control over all executive offices. And he argues for this, but the founders didn't agree unanimously on how far this went at the time. And so Congress ended up creating independent boards and offices early in the nation's history. And life just went on with this separation of powers. In the early days, the president removed executive officers sometimes. Disputes happened, but no one really crossed any lines with regards to who holds the big power. Then we get to the 1980s, where things begin to shift. We've got 15 minutes left, so I'm going to try and wrap it up. We get to the 1980s, where a legal theory starts to be born. And the term, you may have come across it, unitary executive theory begins to be born. Unitary executive theory starts being used as a bunch of scholars come together during the Reagan administration, and they argue that when this article was penned, it meant that all executive power really needs to be accountable to the president. So in the executive branch, one of those three branches in government, it's not just the presidency that sits in the executive branch. You have the presidency, you have the Department of Justice, you have agencies that Congress created. So like the Environmental Agency. Congress is going to create the Environmental Agency and they put it there under the executive branch to function independently of any political party. So often with a lot of these positions in cabinet and Congress, they're elected by the people. So they're very partisan. But Congress felt it necessary that there are some things in life that are non-partisan, like the environment, environmental laws, or the things to do with money and the bank and the Fed, etc. So they hire people based on skill and not necessarily based on party, and they put them in those positions. So these are some of the sort of things that sit in the executive branch. So what these people in the 1980s said was that, no, this isn't right. Everyone should be held accountable to the will of the people. So these people should be held accountable to the president because the president is who the people voted in. So they keep making this argument during that time period. And for years, it grows. It grows in thought. It grows in function about how much power the president really should have. A big change happens in 2001. So under the Reagan administration, it's a theory that's born, but not a lot of action is done on it. And then you get to 2001 and we have a turning point with regards to the presidency. And what's that big turning point that happens? It's 9/11. 9/11 happens, and under emergency, what is the consequence of that emergency with regards to the presidency, the seat of power? You not answering means that I've ended up going on a tangent and no one's following what I'm talking about.
Is that the when it's an emergency executive, when they can't make any more laws or rules and he just controls everything for a period of time?
So
The word
that's
escapes me.
no, that's fine. So that seat of power, the presidency, ends up being given a whole load of power, which it was legal for them to give power to, but it's never given back. It just exists now under the president. So the emergency goes away, the war on terror dies down, but that power is never returned back to Congress, back to wherever it came from. And so now this seat of power is more powerful than it was before. And this story just continues, that as time goes on, this seat of power grows more powerful and those restraints get removed piece by piece. I'm going to end with this. It's not as far as I would have wanted to go because I want to leave some time for some questions. But when we talk about the last president, Donald Trump as the last president, Obama goes through his 8 years in office, and his mandate, his personal mandate, is to decrease the power that the USA has, that this seat has. And so Donald Trump comes in, and that last president of the USA study that we have from Daniel 11 verses 1 to 4, I think it's 1 to 4. What is it about at its core? It's the last president of what? If you can wrap your heads back to 2016 and we're talking about the last president. Catherine, I'm going to ask you because you were with me when we did this.
Sure. The last president of the Sixth Kingdom?
It's very, for me at least, very important that we recognize that when we spoke about Donald Trump as the last president, it was the last president of the Sixth Kingdom. This kingdom over here that's got all this regulated power. If anyone wants to have a wild, I'll just say educated guess as to why he's the last president of the Sixth Kingdom, what does he do in his 4 years that means that beyond that point, we don't have a Sixth Kingdom anymore? Just going on the theme of what...
Consolidated power to the executive branch.
Consolidated power into the executive branch, because that's what made the Sixth Kingdom unique. So if Donald Trump is the last president of the Sixth Kingdom, this kingdom that was restrained in regards to how much power it had, here's your 2016 to 2020. I'm just going to put this 2020/21. What story do we tell in this period? Between 2021 and the Sunday Law. If Donald Trump was the last president of the Sixth Kingdom, then when Biden comes in, what is he?
The first president of the seventh?
First president of the seventh. And in Acts 27, that's the story we tell. That from 2021, this seventh kingdom is now in power and it's just going to grow. So here's Biden, your president of your seventh kingdom. And this fornication that's happening here when we start talking about the Sunday Law is the point where something goes from good to bad. The story we're discussing is the sin of the seventh kingdom as this bad entity, Donald Trump, commits fornication with this seventh kingdom and changes it from just a head into a beast. So in my mind, if we take a step back from the work of the woman, this bad woman, and we ask ourselves the question, what's the difference between the sixth and the seventh kingdom? Now what would your answer be?
Consolidation of power.
Consolidated power. Because that's what these kingdoms are inherent to themselves. It's how much power they have or can wield. And these terms are loose. We may come up with better terms. Regulated power and consolidated power. I appreciate that over the last 20 minutes, we kind of rushed through some stuff. But I hope that made sense. We don't have enough time to go into this into a bit more detail. But the point that I wanted to try and demonstrate, for me at least, is the role that the woman plays in creating this sixth kingdom when she finds protection in the earth. And that there is a good woman that we can demonstrate using Revelation 12 that creates this kingdom and then rides this kingdom that it creates. And then this kingdom ends up, it doesn't say committing adultery, but hopefully now we can see that it's committing adultery because it's married to this good woman, commits adultery, and that's the sin that marks the Sunday law as the Sunday law. And hopefully when other teachers come around, depending on what they choose to share or go through, will explain why July 18 becomes that marker at this point, and not November and not January and etc. If there's one key point that I want to take away, that I do take away from all of this, is that the kingdom that's committing fornication with Donald Trump, the woman, is the seventh kingdom, not the sixth. This seventh kingdom was good. And then becomes bad. And we didn't say it in application, but what this kingdom is the presidency as an institution. So we'll stop there and then open up for questions. I know some people sent me questions, but if there are any questions on what we discussed, then we can talk about those in brief before we close. Would a summary be beneficial, or does anyone have any specific questions?
Summary would be really appreciated, by me at least.
Sure. So we started off by using base definitions of what a woman is. It's just an entity with an ideology. That ideology can be good, can be bad, depending on the context. When we're talking about Revelation 17, just reading through the story, we can see that it's a bad ideology. It wouldn't be called sin or fornication or adultery if it was a good ideology, because this head or this kingdom or this seat of power is created to do good. And so as it's created to do good, it's designed to have something with good ideas, use it to accomplish that good. The thing that marks a beast as a beast is the relationship that that seat of power is going to have with the woman, with a bad woman. That's what makes it a beast, is whether it commits fornication or not. If it doesn't commit fornication, it's just a kingdom. It's just a seat of power. It's just a presidency. It's just a throne. But as soon as it commits fornication, it's a beast now. So we spent quite a bit of time looking at those core definitions, because in the part 2, I wanted to go through Revelation 12 and trace the story from where we are in 4 BC, at least. I say 4 BC, but it's really that history, of suggesting perhaps there's another way of looking at this woman in Revelation 12. So I went through using core definitions and comparing and contrasting the moon and the sun to try and see if that woman is solely a church when we talk about the gospel, or is there something that we can learn from this theocracy under the moon dispensation. And my suggestion is that one thing that I can pick out is that under that moon dispensation, for sure, that nation of Israel is more than just a church. It's a state. It's a government. That sanctuary is two things. So if we go to the next dispensation and those two things are separated, then we can't ignore one of the two parts. And often we focus on one of the parts. And I'm suggesting that we can look at the other of those parts, the state function, which Rome is going to do now. And by Rome, it's really just the people. Because again, from the beginning, all these are just governments or systems or institutions created by the people to serve the people. So when we get to the 1260, at this point, and that woman, the people, are going to be persecuted and etc., they're going to find refuge in the earth, this landmass. And they find that refuge long before 1798, long before any kingdom is created. It's just a civilization of people that are looking for safety. And they end up creating this government to protect them. Going forward, or to serve them, should I say, going forward. And that's what they do in 1798. That was our first part of all of that. And I went through all of that to try and answer the question, what makes the sixth kingdom different from the seventh kingdom? Separate to the transformation that the seventh kingdom goes through, where it commits fornication with the bad woman. And that's where we started talking about this idea of power and separation of power. So in conclusion, without going through the steps at least, my suggestion is that this difference between the sixth kingdom and the seventh kingdom is how much power they have. The sixth kingdom has access to little power because it's regulated. The seventh kingdom has a lot of power. And that doesn't make the seventh kingdom bad. It just means it has a lot of power. The word Graham uses that it's easily corruptible. I'll use the terminology that it's easy for an entity with bad ideas to then do bad things because it has access to all this power that the sixth just wouldn't let it have access to. Why this, in my mind, becomes necessary is because there are several questions that I think are open questions that can be addressed. And I'll just lay them out and we won't answer them. They're just things for us to think about. Is in 2021, the king of the north that defeats the king of the south. Remember, I suggested that the king of the north is a bad woman. Who is that king of the north in 2021? If the seventh kingdom is good and Biden is good, a good woman, then who is this bad woman that defeats the king of the south in 2021, or at least inflicts that deadly wound?
Is it republicanism?
So someone suggested, I'm not going to give my opinion, but someone suggested republicanism. Someone suggested Trump.
MAGA.
Someone suggested MAGA, etc., etc. Whatever, I'll leave you to think about it for yourselves. We can exchange on WhatsApp, or however you want to go about it. I'm just conscious of time. Is that this woman that you describe in 2021 should be the same woman you see in 2024 at the Sunday law. So however you're going to answer this question, I would suggest needs to be consistent about whatever answer you're going to give about who the woman is in the Sunday law period in application. So that's one question. And then the second is, that. So, and then a second question is, Trump term 1 and Trump term 2, what differences are there? Like, if Trump was the last president of the Sixth Kingdom, and the Sixth Kingdom is a lamb, it's good, it never becomes a dragon, then what is Trump in his first term? Is he a good woman? Is he a bad woman? What's going on there? And it's my suggestion that understanding the difference between the Sixth and the Seventh Kingdom helps answer this question of what the difference is between Trump's 2 terms in office in terms of who he represents prophetically in those 2 different time periods. And then there's a whole bunch of other questions that come to mind. When does the Seventh Kingdom begin? Etc., etc. So I know I've left you with questions, and that's not how this should work. But as our studies work as a movement, is that studying things open themselves up to more questions. And so I've made the next teacher's life more difficult, I hope, in that I've left you questions to ask them. So I don't know if you have any questions separate to the ones I gave you about today before we close.
Curtis, just being mindful of time, would you like to close first? Otherwise, you're going to get in a lot of trouble, and then you can ask your question.
Yes. Thank you. Let's close in a word of prayer. Dear God, thank you for today. Thank you for the Sabbath. Thank you for your love, for your protection in being with us as a movement. Personally, I'm grateful for the culture that we have today and the openness to question you, openness to question each other. I pray that that feeling, if it has not, may spread to each individual here today. And I pray that as we continue to grow as an institution, as we continue to learn more about you and your style of government, we may best reflect that in our relationship to knowledge, to learning. I thank you always for the work that you do with us and for us. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.